What up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of That Time in Hip Hop. I am your host, Vegas of Hip Hop Now Podcast. With me, back like cook crack. You know what it is. Tony from EnterdaDome.com and Enter the Dome Podcast. What's good, man?
Hey man, I'm good, man. Look, I'm sipping on some zero sugar. I don't know if you can see that nectar right here, some water, cause man, me and the wife was in Charleston, South Carolina for her birthday, man, and we drank and ate so much shit. I'm getting back on my bike tomorrow, man.
Yeah, that's what you got to do, man.
Yeah.
For those of y'all watching, this is a podcast that we have like 71 episodes. It's about history and nostalgia in hip hop, but education also. For those who don't know, we've done episodes on from MC Hammer to the 1995 Source Awards, or 96. Which one was it? I think it was 95. 95 Source Awards. The time in hip hop when KRS-One threw PM Dawn off the stage. We've done a couple of joints, man.
Yeah.
Nas, the autobiography. We talked about Illmatic, and not just talking about Illmatic and what happened and stuff like that, but giving you some real context. Like our main context in that episode was, did the Source magazine create the mystique of Illmatic before it dropped? So we talk about things like that, and we got a special episode for y'all today. But before we get into that, head over to EnterdaDome.com and read some articles. You know what I'm saying? Check out some of the content Tony got going on there. Also follow him on Twitter. We don't recognize the X unless it's Malcolm. I'm sorry. But also, you can check out my podcast, Hip Hop Now Podcast, which is a weekly news podcast right here on YouTube. Subscribe to the channels. Stay locked in if you enjoy the content. Now, this month in hip hop will be the 30th anniversary on March 18th, 1993. The Far Side released "Passing Me By." Their hit single, probably. Well, I was going to say the one they're most known for, but I don't know, because that Running Away joint is...
Nah, it's Passing Me By.
It's Passing Me By.
Yeah.
But 30 years ago, Tone, when you first heard that record from the Far Side, what was your thoughts?
The first time I heard it was actually on Rap City. You know what I'm saying? Just sitting there looking at TV, whatever. And, you run to the TV when Rap City come on. And I just remember when the beat came on, the videos in black and white. Man, in my younger days, I used to sport a sag. I mean, it was just like, I was like, who are they? The Far Side. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, I thought they was dope from day one. They all had, unique voices. They were all different. They all looked different. You know what I'm saying? Coming from the West Side also was interested with their sound. You know what I'm saying? They were still reminiscent of native tongues. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And stuff, and even hieroglyphs and all that stuff too, which is West Coast also. But man, it was amazing, man. But I'm gonna tell you something crazy though, babe. It was more amazing for me several years later when I was throwing parties in college. I mean, we've had this conversation before. Me and you was in the streets and in the clubs. You know what I'm saying? So it used to amaze me that one of the DJs I knew, he used to play that joint and people dancing and wilding and Passing Me By in the club. And then fast forward to CIAA and all these other big events down south over the years, they would still play Passing Me By 10, 15 years later, and it was in the old school sets. And it's a club banger for an old school set, but it's an underground West Coast song, so it's a very ill dynamic to the song, man, and to the group.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I remember the same thing for me. The first time I heard it was when I saw the video, and like you said, there's the setup of that beat. Like you just don't know what's going to happen, and then the beat drops and you hear them rhyming, and even just the creativity, the wordplay within the song about a woman you either can't get or you're trying to get with, and you don't want her to pass you by. Just a dope record. I instantly liked Far Side, and I think in a lot of ways when all right, kids, when y'all think of like, why these old heads like the 90s so much? What is it? The 90s, and we talking from 1990 to even 99, which we just did an episode on 1999 on EnterdaDome podcast. That decade was so rich with artistry and lyrics and music and influence, and just everything was, it felt like everything that was being done was new. And when you look at the far side, like you said, this is underground, this is West Coast, it's lyrical.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of appealed to different regions just based off how it was. And like you said, you had a party playing it, and it's not necessarily like a dance tune, but
absolutely, but people dance to it, man. And just real quick, people did like Love Running. Far Side to me did have two back-to-back joints that was, that was very hard, you know what I'm saying? But, it's one of them things where that song, like you said, it crossed over to a degree, you know what I'm saying? And I know that to this day, they probably did not expect that song to do that, man. Like, I just think they was released, just making some dope music. The whole debut album from the Far Side was very dope, very creative. You know what I'm saying? It was critically acclaimed, and that ended up being one of the singles. And, I think they was probably hoping for some TV time, you know what I'm saying? But to be able to hear that resonate in the clubs during that period and generations after that, it's a testament to a great song, man. Sometimes a song will stick, and it stuck.
Right. And during the era of hip hop groups, which we don't have as much now. Back then we had a couple of hip hop groups, and they were popping up every now and again. Like I did my tape series on Recognize the Thresholds of Negative Stress. Like groups like that would just pop up out of nowhere with a dope single. So 1993, March 18th, 1993, Far Side, after me by 30 years. One of the classic records in hip hop history. If you haven't heard it, definitely go check it out. Go watch the video on YouTube. The video was dope too. It wasn't no huge budget. It was just a dope song with a video to match. So now let's get into the business at hand. We got a dope episode for y'all. So, Tone, tell people what we here to talk about.
Man, today, man, we're going to talk about a period when the underground came back, man. You know what I'm saying? I never thought it went anywhere to a degree, but we have spoken before about the hip-hop war of 1996, then the shiny suit era or year of 1997, falling into one of the better years of 1998 in rap history. But still during that time, man, I think a lot of MCs who didn't make it to the mainstream was hungry. They were doing a lot of freestyle engagements in small clubs all over New York and in other regions as well. You know what I'm saying? And at some point, these guys, we're going to talk about these guys, started a record label, Rawkus Records. And Rawkus Records ended up being kind of somewhat of that resurgence of the East Coast sound that people probably loved when you think about the time period of Enter the Stage with Buckshot and Black Moon and Smith and Wesson and Helter Skelter. And, during that time period, there was a certain sound right before Illmatic dropped that became popular again with a lot of guys in New York and, the boom bap style type, the lyrical guys who, were very focused on some consciousness. And when you think of consciousness, you definitely think about some of the first acts from Rawkus, man. But even what's more important, man, is the backdrop of the guy Brian Brader, James Mayer, and their other high school friend, James Murdoch, were the people behind the closed doors of the business side of starting Rawkus. And just for a little perspective, James Murdoch is the son of Rupert Murdoch, who is a business mogul, investor, founded like the Wall Street Journal, and was at one point up until 2 years ago was like the CEO of Fox News, which is funny that he was the CEO and helped start Fox News. And you think about what the Rawkus MCs was rapping about. They was anti-Fox News. You know what I'm saying? So that's the funny part of that, man, to see who started it. It's almost like who started the Source magazine. When you look at the people who started the Source magazine in Boston, and then look what the Source magazine became for hip hop, what Rawkus became, and to this day, there are some legends that came out of Rawkus, you know what I'm saying, records, man. So, you know, when I first think about Rawkus and think about Mos Def, Talib Kweli, Company Flow, Reflection Eternal, which is Talib and High Tech, and High Tech was also signed with them also. And some of the first projects, meaning, you know, Company Flow first album is like the jump off of Rawkus Records, man, and they had underground feel to it, and these, you know, DJ and MCing, you know what I'm saying? So it kind of gave you that feel, man. So that was a start. We're gonna get into all the albums and everything about Rawkus, man, but it came at a time where there was some pushback with popular hip hop and pushback with the radio, even though this is a complex conversation, because while Rawkus started dropping albums in 1997, and the funny thing is their first album is in 1997, which is considered the Shining Suit era. They started at that time to be anti that, even though that year had amazing albums we talked about in a previous episode. And 98 was amazing going into the Black Star, man. But what was your first thoughts when you heard, did you hear Company Flow first, man? And what was your thoughts on them setting off Rawkus?
Yeah, I didn't hear Company Flow until
it's Fun Crusher Plus. It's that Fun Crusher Plus album.
Yeah, I didn't hear it until after, and I didn't know it was on Rawkus. I think you know, when Rawkus started to catch my attention, it was with Mos and Talib with Black Star. And, you know, there were dudes who I knew, you know, they messed with Company Flow and some of the early albums or whatever. But, you know, at that point, it was just like every other underground hip hop label, right? Like,
let me ask you a question real quick. I ain't gonna cut y'all. But also in 1997, not only did that Company Flow album come out, but the first Sound Bombing came out. This is still in 1997. Right. So do you remember the first Sound Bombing?
I do. But again, I think for me, it was around a time where you know, it was a lot out, and I know hearing some of this stuff, it was like any other underground label where it was kind of like, oh yeah, those dudes are cool, they can rhyme, but they didn't really stand out like that. I think the Sound Bombing joint and like Lyricist Lounge are the ones that kind of had like, oh, okay, you know, this might be something. And then obviously we know they went on. One thing I wanted to say for those who watch television shows like Succession, the thinking is that Rupert Murdoch, the Succession was kind of loosely based off of him and his family, which would include the son who owned Rawkus. I don't know what character he would be. I guess he would be the youngest one. Or no, he would be the damn, what's his name? The dude that rhymed on the show. I can't remember his name. But yeah, it's to me early on, it was something that I saw happening, but I didn't buy Company Flow's album, and I didn't have Sound Bombing 1, but I was hearing about it.
Yeah, so Sound Bombing 1 was pretty good. But that Lyricist Lounge I thought was interesting, man. You heard a lot of freestyles on that, and a lot of notable MCs that we'll get into also during this episode were starting to affiliate themselves with Rawkus, with Lyricist Lounge and Sound Bombing, man. But you know, and again, Lyricist Lounge came out in 1998, and it was kind of like giving you the prelude to Mos Def and Talib Kweli Black Star album. Now, when Black Star album dropped in 1998, you talking about 1998 with Outkast, Aquemini, Jay-Z Volume 2, DMX dropping 2 albums, Big Pun, Capitalist Punishment, Nori. I mean, you're talking about a massive year in 1998, but Talib Kweli and Mos Def were so good when that Definition came out and everything like that. There was like, you know, at 1, 2, 3, Mos Def and Talib Kweli, they did that KRS-One vibe and everything. And Cass was like, they had heard of Mos and Talib and them on the underground, but now they had a video. Then they had a video on BT. Then you had that Respiration with Common. Then it's like, okay, they solidified because they rocking with Common. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And stuff like that. Then you start seeing, like, you know what? Okay, these dudes are different, right? Like they super lyrical. And then you listen to Black Star, it's critically acclaimed, and you start thinking of them in that same light of your Tribe Called Quest, Brand Nubians, De La. Like they mean a lot. They have a lot of vision in their rhymes and a lot of black power. And I mean, it's called a Black Star, man. You know what I'm saying? Marcus Garvey. You know what I'm saying? So we're talking about, and you think about what they were saying on Brown Skin Lady, and Brown Skin Lady is like Bonita. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Talking about Twice in a Lifetime, the rhyming displayed on Twice in a Lifetime that Mos Def did is when I was like, you know what? He might be one of those guys, right? Like, even though the Tyler Quali is dope, we're gonna definitely talk about a lot that he did in his solo career, a lot that he did with Rawkus. But most was special. Like, I thought his performance on Black Star was one of the better performances of 1998, and that's saying a lot with the type of MCs that came out, you know what I'm saying, during that time, or had another resurgence during that time. What was your thoughts on the Black Star album after Lyricist Lounge, the Sound Bomb, and did you think, okay, this Rawkus movement might have something to it?
Yeah, I think at that point, Black Star had my attention, right? Like, where Company Flow and hearing stuff like that was cool. It didn't really pull me away from some of the things I was listening to. But when I heard Black Star, I was like, nah, these dudes could rap. Like you said, Mos obviously stood out because he not to say that Talib didn't have personality, but it doesn't necessarily resonate through his lyrics as much as it did for Mos. And I just remember hearing the joints, and like you said, they did the Resurrection joint with Common, and that was like a cosign. And when I heard Definition, I was like, yo.
And then Redefinition.
Right. Then Redefinition. I was
and then Pete Rock did the remix.
The remix, right.
Of Respiration. You know,
right.
And that's, you know, key, and you know, for me, Pete Rock is like the king of remixes. So when he touched it and blessed it, and then Black Thought was on the remix.
Exactly. And that's what I mean. It's like you at first it's like they over there. These two cats are not as known across hip hop, but now as a group they're making a little noise, and then they're getting these cosigns. It just made them stand out for me at that time. But I didn't think there was a run yet until the solos started dropping. Then
and you know what? Okay, I'm glad you said that. When you think of run, so in 1999, Rawkus had like 6 albums to drop. You know what I'm saying? Now, of course, they did. I took a look. Company Flow had another project in 1999. Did High and Mighty had that Home Field Advantage, but and those were cool projects. But now, in 1999, Mos Def drops Black on Both Sides, fake. And, you know, like I said, it's coming off a year after the Black Star album, and you're wondering, okay, was this just a time and just a moment in time with this Black Star? No, it wasn't, because when I put in Black on Both Sides, and he talked at the beginning and talked about, you know, people asked him what's going on with hip hop. He said, what's going on with us? Because we are hip hop. And then the song Hip Hop came in, and then he had that line, hip hop went from selling crack to smoking it, you know what I'm saying? And he was still kind of taking shots at some of the things he didn't like about hip hop, and he kind of did that on the Black Star album with the Children's Story, you know what I'm saying? And the Children's Story, to a degree, is reminiscent of what J. Rule was doing on One Day on Wrath of the Math in 96, and what De La did with Stakes is High, what the Roots did with What They Do. You know, Mos Def kind of did that on the Black Star album. I mean, and then he did it again. He was taking those shots on hip hop on Black on Both Sides, but nevertheless, Black on Both Sides, when you think of Mathematics, we think of Umi Says, was something different, but just the rhyme skills he displayed on Black on Both Sides, it instantly became one of my favorite hip hop albums of all time, and still is to this day. People who follow me on social media know that outside of Rakim and Nas, Mos Def is my favorite MC. You know what I'm saying? Just his performance, Vague, on Black on Both Sides was to me, no hyperbole, I thought of that performance the same way I looked at when I heard Nas perform on Illmatic. When I heard Biggie perform on Ready to Die. When I heard, you know what I'm saying, the way Deck was on Forever. You know what I'm saying? Like stellar performances. I mean, the dude was flawless to me on Black on Both Sides, and to me, it stands up with any album in hip hop history. This is what Rawkus was releasing. They released several amazing underground albums. I'm going to get into a few more, man. But what was your thoughts? What was the first song you heard from Black on Both Sides? What did you think about Mos Def at that time? I know we touched on a few things last episode, but kind of go into some more about that.
Yeah. The first song I heard off his solo album was Mathematics. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, it's one of those things where, like, the Black Star album, which we did a whole episode on, and you should go check that out. But the Black Star album was like the perfect alley-oop to their solo careers. They just had to finish the play. And Mos Def definitely dunked it, because when I heard Mathematics, I was like, oh, this is what we doing? Like, we going right into it. And then speaking of songs that would get played in the club, Miss Fat Booty definitely get played in the club. So it just felt like what we knew from him just by hearing verses here and there on Black Star kind of came true, you know, on his solo album. And honestly, it was one of those things where I'm like, man, this is like classic material. This is when I really started to feel like, yo, Rawkus is making a name for themselves now with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, they really were, man. And then, you know, I think I said this before. Recently, I've been listening to the song "Got" a whole lot from Black on Both Sides, and the joint Brooklyn. You know what I'm saying, when he was rhyming, and then that "Who Shot Your Beat" came on. And he started flowing off that Biggie joint, man, and the joint with Bust on there, the joint with Talib on there. I mean, like I said, man, I really believe that it's a classic in terms of skills. I know not on the terms of shifting the culture, like the Chronic is not that kind of classic, but in terms of mic performance, it's a classic album, man. And then, you know, right after that, man, one of my favorite MCs, man, during that period, Pharaoh Monch came out with Internal Affairs, man, and that's coming off. You know, I'm an Organized Confusion fan. 2 years before that, the Equinox came out, man, and I played that shit to death. It's my favorite Organized Confusion album, but I was a fan way back with Fudge Pudge. You know what I'm saying? So when Simon Says came out and the dun 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 dun, I'm like, what is this? You know what I'm saying? I really hadn't heard nothing like it, man. I was like, this some bust around MOP shit right here. Yeah. And he delivered, I mean, dope hook, just dope lyrics, man. The flow, it banged on the streets, it banged in the club. And then you listen to that album, man. I mean, incredible, man. But what was your thoughts, man, with Pharaoh and Internal Affairs, man?
Man, first of all, it's like, oh, I remember dude from Organized Confusion, you know, I was a big fan. Oh, he lost mad weight.
Yeah, he did.
You know, that's when, because some of y'all don't know the other Pharaoh that we know.
Yeah.
W version. But man, like you said, when I heard Simon Says, and I'm just telling y'all right now, you hear that beat, you get the vibe. You don't even have to be there to understand how big that song was. But man, when you in a club setting and the lights are flickering and that's on and people moving, and that beat came on, it just didn't matter. It was kind of like Annie Up, but Annie Up was like Dangerous when that came on. It was kind of like, all right, ladies, just back up. Think fellas might get crazy. But Simon Says was just ridiculous. And, you know, I knew he was dope anyway from his run with Organized Confusion. You hear this record, he's even crazier. So I was highly anticipating his album. And it was really like between what they did with Black Star and Mos coming out with his solo and what that was, and then now this, like, Rawkus planted that flag.
Yeah, they got several. Now at this point in time, they got several songs that has made like the Billboard Top 100. You know what I'm saying? And then also at the time, I want to say the Black on Both Sides, I think went gold. You know what I'm saying? So you talking about a gold album at this time, and then DJ Spinner, Heavy Beats Volume 1 came out also in 1999. But then in 1999, the Sound Bombing 2 came out. And as you guys can see the picture right here in the background, I mean, you talking about a dope album, Eminem with Any Man on there, Talib and Most got tracks on there. Like I said in the last episode, the song Medina Green, Crosstown Beef. I just love Most Def verse on there. Sadat X and Common on 1999. Bahamadia and Talib Kweli on Chaos. It might be Total Chaos or Chaos. RA, the Rugged Man, is on there. Oh my God, so many guys are on that album representing the underground, man. And I mean, it was put together beautifully, man. Like Sound Bombing is one of my favorite. Part 2 is one of my favorite Rawkus releases, period. And understand something, Rawkus had over 35 albums that came out during the duration of their existence, not counting in 2007 when they had the that 50 joint, you know what I'm saying? That Rawkus 50, we'll get into that. It was from 2007, man. But Sound Bombing 2, man, you remember the first track you heard or anything stand out from Sound Bombing 2?
I think what I remember the most is like I was having trouble tracking their releases because, you know, like, again, like I said, Black Star and Most and Pharaoh, they had my attention.
Yeah.
But I didn't know who else was on the label. I didn't know what else they were dropping. So when Sound Bombing 2 came out, I had forgot about Sound Bombing to begin with.
Right. It's been a couple of years, yeah.
Around that time, I think maybe a little bit later, but I think I started hosting a hip hop show in B-More, which was an underground hip hop show. So yeah, most of the stuff you name, you know, we were spinning them joints because Rawkus was hot. It was on fire, and they were food for a college radio station in the late 90s. We played a lot of them joints.
So now that we've talked about these first, the 1997 to 1999, 2000 Rawkus, they still hot, man. If I'm looking, Lyrics Lounge 2 comes out. That's a good project, man. Hip Hop for Respect comes out. It's an 8-song like EP, and really they did it because they was doing this. They did it as a response to when the police killed Amadou Diallo. You know what I'm saying? So it was a response to that. But then, man, after Ego Trip, Big Payback, Rawkus releases The Big Picture from Big L, posthumous album. It went gold based, and the single was Flamboyant. You know what I'm saying? You know, L had died a year before that, man. So the hip hop world, especially on the East Coast, especially in Harlem and in New York, were really upset about Big L murder. Obviously, New York had already lost Biggie right before that, and the hip hop world had lost Pac before that. All this to gun violence, and the same thing happened to Big L. And it was so much potential there because all the rumors started coming out about the signing of Rockefeller. We know that Dame and Big L grew up together in Harlem. We knew that Jay actually was taken to the radio station for one of the first times outside of Kane and all of them by Big L. The famous freestyle, they talked about that on the Stretch and Barbito documentary and everything. And like Jay-Z said, oh, that's the Big L thing. Like,
right.
I didn't know that was a thing at the time because we living at that moment, and we leave the club, but we go to the radio station and we rhyming and you know, L take me to the station type of thing. But he was like, yeah, the people still come up to me talking about the Big L thing. You know what I'm saying? And Jay-Z has been on record more than once saying, you know, yes, that signing was about to happen. It was true. He said, yes, he thought that at some point L was going to be a bigger star than he was, because then when I say he was before joining Rockefeller, because he had the writing skills to do big records. That's what Jay-Z said about Big L. And of course, the underground loved Big L. He pretty much was the Prince of Harlem. You know what I'm saying? And you know, the big picture is, you was happy to hear it, vague, but you was also sad because you heard the Platinum Plus with Big Daddy Kane, you heard The Enemy with Fat Joe, you heard the joint with Pac, you heard the heights, you heard everything like, oh my God, this is what L was gonna be. And then you fantasized about, okay, if this Rockefeller thing would have happened, you know, how does hip hop look in New York? With Big L at some point, maybe rhyming over Just Blaze and Kanye and Bink, and all of these guys having access to Pharrell and Timbaland, and all these people Jay-Z had access to. And then, it just, oh man, but the big picture, it hit a home run for real hip hop heads in terms of this is what an L album could look more polished than even Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous, which obviously I love. I recently posted me in the car listening to The Danger Zone, you know what I'm saying? And, Street Struck is my favorite Big L song and all that. But man, what was your thoughts on the big picture, man? I know I'm going on and on because I just, I live so much on the table, man, but I really loved it, man. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like most people, man, it's kind of like, the untapped potential. As much as Big L did to leave an impression on hip hop, his peers, and the fans, he never really got the opportunity to really do it on a big scale. Like, he really only had one album, and that was like early in hip hop. Like, hip hop was totally different at this point in time. Lyrics still mattered, but people were making money.
Yeah, it's 5 years later. It's 5 years after his debut.
Right, 5 years after, and there's so much that changed in that time. So much changed with certain MCs like Nas. You know what I'm saying? So, it was like a bittersweet moment. If you want to know more about the whole Big L thing, we also did an episode on that, so you should check that out. But when I heard it, I think I was impressed because at that point in time, posthumous albums usually weren't that good, right?
Right.
They just put stuff together and it never sounded like something you would want to hear. The Big Picture is more like a mixtape. And I think what really pushed people towards it was because it was banging on the underground. We had it on the radio show, Ebonics.
Yeah.
Ebonics and Flamboyant. Like that was the A and the B that was just getting ran to death. And a really dope performance by Kane on that album. Like
that Platinum Plus, ain't it? Yeah.
Platinum Plus verse was it, but
even Fat Joe got off on The Enemy.
Yeah, Fat Joe too. But yeah, like you said, man, it was a bittersweet thing. You kind of wish it didn't play out that way. I think this project in some shape or form was going to make it to Rawkus anyway, and then the Rockefeller thing was going to pop off. I wonder how that would have worked out, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like if he comes out with a more completed Big Picture for Rawkus, does he go to Rockefeller? Like, I would think he would because of everything you named, the opportunities. But
I think it was still coming. But I think, me personally, real quick, I think he still goes to Rockefeller because of Dame, and he does have a good relationship with Jay-Z. I think that what he probably would have done, though, is kind of what Dipset did when they still had Dipset Records and Dipset Movement. I think he would still had the Flamboyant label that he was doing, Flamboyant Entertainment. I think he still would have had that. Under that, he probably would have had McGruff, I heard McGruff and all them still rocking with him. You know what I'm saying? And he would have had his own thing and still rock with Rockefeller also, and kind of a joint venture, kind of like his crew, kind of like State Property, how Benny Siegel was. You know what I'm saying? So I think that still all happens, man. But now something happens in 2000 that was very special. And as much as I love Black on Both Sides, I'm not saying this album I like it better, but I'm saying on that same level of creativity, lyricism. I was on record saying this a couple of months ago from a tweet that I did a couple of years ago, that I thought that what Talib Kweli and High Tech did with the group Train of Thought. Well, Train of Thought was the album, Reflection Eternal was the group. Train of Thought, for me, is one of the best albums I've heard in the 2000s. I really think it's that good. I think High Tech production was flawless. I think what Talib did lyrically and song-wise in terms of like his vision and focus, was it Get By? No, Get By is not on that one. The Blast is on this one.
Blast.
So you got the Blast on here. You got this song at the end. It's he has a song with like Rick James on it, I believe.
Yeah, I can.
You
Oh, I
know,
forgot about
he had
that.
a song "Good Morning." He had that song "Sweet Memories," I believe, or something like that. And then there's a song called "For Women" as the title, as the bonus track on the album. And he goes through a story about like 4 different women. One of them like lived to be like over 100 years old. And he talked about her life. I mean, one of the most creative songs I've ever heard, man. But Train of Thought, man, is a beautiful album. I mean, he got one song that kind of got an African vibe to it with the drums and stuff like that. Like, it to me, everything you can think of in hip hop, as far as like lyrics, culturally, I think they just hit a home run, man, with Train of Thought, man, with Reflection Eternal, man. It's a beautiful album, man.
Yeah, I remember, when Black Star came out and they were doing what they were doing, and then we got Most. I remember wondering, like, damn, when Talib dropping? Like, is he even going to get a solo run? So when I saw it was like Reflection Eternal, I was kind of confused because I'm like, well, what is this? Another group? Blah blah blah.
And it was.
And it was. But man, when I heard it, like when I heard the blast, I was like, yo. First of all, it's the perfect song to get people to recognize you in the same way that people recognize Mos Def, because now they're just saying your name. You know what I'm saying? In the record. But when you talk about something that sounds like an instant classic, your first listen, it's all of the things you mentioned. It's beats, it's bars, it's culture, it's politics, it's protests, it's consciousness. Like it's all of these different. It's Brooklyn. It's all these different things that they should have called it Food for Thought, because that's what it felt like listening to it. You know what I'm saying? Just a very dope album. And like you said earlier, by this time we like Rawkus they got a moment. Like Bad Boy had a moment.
And
Death
look,
Row,
and look. So we talk about what Most did on Black and Both Sides. You talk about Talib Kweli with Reflection Eternal with him and High Tech, and then you talk about Black Star album, both of them together, and you still have now 1 year later in 2001 when High Tech goes off by himself and does the first high technology album, and it's like a who's who on there. You got that Round and Round We Go with Method Man on it. You got the joint with Core Mega, All I Need Is You. You got the Sun God with Common. You got the song, oh my God, one of my favorite songs. You have Mos Def on a song on there called Get to Steppin'. Listen, people, you get the YouTube, put the song in from High Tech, Get to Steppin', and look what him and Mos Def did on that song. I think Bradford Marcellus is at the beginning of the song talking. I think he plays some on the song. It is absolutely one of my favorite. Most don't, he does his Umi says. He's not rapping.
Right.
He's singing in a hip hop way. You know what I'm saying? And it's very dope, man. And that album with High Tech, man, High Technology, Vague, man, they are batting here. They're hitting out the park right now.
Nothing is whack. Everything is dope, refined. It's almost flawless. Is this the same album that had Josephine with Ghostface on it?
I believe so.
Yeah, because I know Ghost.
Hey, this one it could be on part 2, but it might be on this one. But I know when Method Man is on there for sure.
On that one. Yeah, man. It was one of those things where, you're not necessarily doubting them, but you don't know what to expect because you like, okay, this is underground doing it like this at a time where radio singles was the move. This, like, a lot of the things they were doing would be considered old school in a lot of ways, right? Early 90s, we boom bapped you out and this and that and third, but now they getting airplay on the radio.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Several songs on this High Tech album.
Bigger budgets for the albums on other labels, bigger video budgets, but they're toe to toe with a lot of the hip hop heavyweights at the time.
And I know it's also in 2001. The Beat Miners had the joint Brace for Impact. You know what I'm saying? And then He had Scratch Volume 1 with various artists from Rawkus. Mad Skills, I Ain't Mad No More. That ended up being unreleased, but I think it leaked also. So a lot of heads still had the Mad Skills album because he was affiliated with Rawkus, and I want to say he might have been signed to Rawkus at some point. So y'all can fact check me on that. But then in 2002, Talib Kweli comes again, babe. He comes with the Quality album in 2002. And I'm going to tell you something. This is when he goes off the roof. Get By comes out. Get By is one of Kanye's big songs at the time, Kanye West, one of his big productions. It's an amazing song. A lot of people got on the remixes of Get By. Jay-Z loved it, and this is also one of the reasons why he said, if skills sold, truth be told, lyrically I be Talib Kweli. So I want to rhyme like common sense, but I did 5 million. I ain't been rhyming like common sense. You know what I'm saying? So this is when Jay was paying attention to this Rawkus movie, because like I tell people, all the biggest stars in the game, they came from the underground. They listened to the underground. You know what I'm saying? Jay knew about them. Trust me. He listened to all of these guys. And so Get By comes out, smash. Then he does the joint Waiting for the DJ. You know what I'm saying? With Bilal. Dope video for that. If I'm not mistaken, he has a song with DJ Quick on the album. We be blazing. So what's blazing? And him and Quick does the beat and does the rhyme on there. You know what I'm saying? Like, he has joints on that Quality album, man. Of course, he has, I want to say he has Pharaoh and Thought and all them on close to the end of the album also. I mean, he has a song on there. I'd be remiss if I didn't say one of my favorite hip-hop songs of 2002 was a song he did called The Proud. If you're not familiar with that song, The Proud is one of Talib Kweli's best songs to me. He talked about September 11th. He talked about the bombing in Oklahoma. I mean, it really goes into he talks about police brutality. The Proud is a stellar song by Talib Kweli, man. And, you know, Why Don't You Stay? You know what I'm saying? Like, Quality is a beautiful album. It got like 4.5 stars out of All Music. It got highly, it was a big album. I want to say it went gold. I know it charted. You know what I'm saying? But man, Talib, now you're talking about Black Star album, talking about Reflection Eternal album, and you're talking about Quality. You have to start looking at Talib Kweli saying, look, this guy's not playing around in terms of being an active MC, putting out quality, great music, babe.
Yo, I think it's not said enough. Talib Kweli had a run as a soloist, like the even several albums after this.
We're gonna get into some of that because I did a whole episode on the Dome podcast like a year ago about the run of Talib Kweli. But as I digress, please continue.
Right? Yeah, it was like, you know, it was surprising, you know, because Moses is like the dude who stood out in the group, and then he solidifies it with Black on Both Sides. But then he starts to taper off and experiment in some ways. So, you know, I liked it, but some people, you know, they want what they want. And Talib Kweli isn't giving you the same thing over and over again. Like you said, he worked. He's just showing a range and a variety of content and music. And it's just so dope. And I remember the first time I heard Just to Get By, I was like, yo, this is a monster song. Like, and by this time I was the host of the show, and you talk about heavy rotation. It was just dope to see all of this happening at this time, and them kind of keeping the boom bap side of things alive without having to stick to boom bap strictly. So
yeah, man, like I said, you talking about being part of 3 projects back to back in a 2 or 3 year span is not talked about enough. You know what I'm saying? You talking about, you know, one of the hardest working MCs at that time was Talib Kweli. I know a lot of people now don't realize that because the way social media and how he's been on social media, he rubbed people, quite a few people the wrong way on social media, and it kind of made people overlook the actual MC and his catalog, because his catalog is very extensive. And it goes after Rawkus also. Extensive catalog and a work ethic, man, that a lot of MCs don't have, man. You know what I'm saying? But speaking of something else Rawkus did that I was proud of when I think about Big L being kind of hardcore, well, they came back around, man, and linked up with Cool G Rap for the Giacana story, also in 2002. And like, man, you know, you got G Rap dropping an album on Rawkus. You know what I'm saying? Hardcore. He ain't missed a beat. And it's a dope album.
It's a dope album. In the two, for those who need the context, Cool G Rap came out in the 80s. Now we'll talk about LL all day long because of his consistency, and sure, it was on a bigger scale, but as far as still being consistently dope with it, Cool G Rap, like Tone, when I heard My Life, even though Rawkus had like 3 different My Lives and The Life, but the Cool G Rap joint, My Life, that beat and the way he, woo,
you know,
I'm at a loss for words, to be honest.
Yeah, man. Just a dope album again from G Rap, and he's also one of those guys who his flow transcends eras. You know what I'm saying? Right. So when you heard him in the Symphony, then you heard him on you know Shame and all of this stuff like that, the Ill Street Blues and etc. Then you hear him on 456, which is my favorite G Rap album. Then you hear him on other projects, and then you fast forward to early 2000s, and he's still lyrically sharp on songs with other great New York rappers who are, 5-10 years younger than him. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it was just an amazing time, man. And also right after that, man, Sound Bomber 3 drops. So now you got 3 Sound Bomber albums, man. Very good album. You know what I'm saying? I like 2 the best, but you still got 1, 2, and 3. Then you got, which this is, probably the time that Talib Kweli maybe some people didn't feel, but in 2004, he still dropped A Beautiful Struggle. You know what I'm saying? And really solid. It's not as good as the other projects, but he did have that song, I think I Try, something like that with Mary J. Blige. He had a couple other really good songs on there. I think it was solid, but when you come out to 3 stellar projects, having a solid project make that project don't seem like it's as good as it is, but if you actually go back to it right now and listen to Beautiful Struggle, it's a solid body of work. It just happened to come out the Black Star album, Reflection Eternal, and Quality. But now we still talking about 4 projects right here in like a 4 or 5 year span. He's dropping albums almost every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because and quality,
yeah,
quality projects, which is dope. But yeah, like even when you think about that, with the label being founded in 1995 and slowly starting to release music, having a certain level of success and notoriety, but kind of being looked at as like an underground label. Most underground labels weren't doing that. They may have had some dope projects, but they didn't have the commercial exposure and commercial success that Rawkus was having, and that these dudes was keeping alive with their albums. Now, Tone, we would be remiss because I think it may play a role a little bit in Rawkus kind of not reaching its full potential, but the Simon Says lawsuit and the fact that because of the Godzilla sample,
yeah, that's right, it did happen. That's right.
It impacted what could have been much greater for Pharoah Monch's solo album.
Yeah, anytime lawsuits hit, it changed the way a lot of your producers, in-house producers, and label deal with sampling and deal with a lot of other legal and business things behind closed doors. So that did hurt them. Obviously, it's going to hurt. Also, just like any other record label, you have a moment in time, right? And if a label has a 4 or 5 year period or 6 year period of a run, then how can you be mad? Now, yeah, we could say if Suge Knight was more responsible, Death Row would have lasted longer because he wouldn't have made Dre feel like I don't even feel like dealing with y'all anymore. You having gang members around, and then some of this stuff ended the pot getting killed. You change some of that stuff, Death Row might have lasted 7, 8 more years, whatever. Bad Boy, unfortunately, 4 years in, maybe to Bad Boy, or not even, Biggie gets killed. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you still have some things go on with Black Rob and Depp and all of them coming after him, but it lost a lot of steam. So Rawkus, for example, it started in 95, but they dropped their first album, Company Floor, in 97. You got from 97 to about 2004, you having a nice run of some charting albums and charting singles, and a couple of guys become underground legends, and stuff like that. So they had a moment where at some point you're gonna fizzle out, because when I look at several more years after that, 2005, 6, 7, you start releasing and no disrespect to none of these guys, I'm not gonna name them, but you start releasing projects from artists and groups who never reached any notoriety. They stayed underground. They never blew. I'm not saying it's nobody's fault. It could have been label issues because of the lawsuits, and just because they started running cold like every label does. I mean, Motown couldn't last forever. You know what I'm saying? Nothing lasts forever. So they did start folding down, and then of course, I think their first distribution was a priority. Then years later, it ended up being with MCA, and I think in Geffen, and then they bought it out, and then they had, you start having these distribution problems until you try to go all the way independent, which leads up to 2007 when they did their Rawkus 50 and dropped like 50 albums, digital albums, all in November 2007, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember the exact date, but it was in November 2007. They dropped 50 digital albums, you know what I'm saying? And you would think with something that unprecedented that people will be talking about that now on platforms and podcasts over the years, and for some reason, man, it didn't stick. And I think that would have been the saving grace for Rawkus if even a few of those albums would have created a star.
Right. Yeah, what's crazy about that whole thing? Like that's something that, like, in 2007, it might have been too early for like a digital craze. You do that now, it's trending everywhere. Because everybody has access to some kind of streaming service to just go listen to them. Social media is definitely bigger today than it was in 07.
Yeah.
And more platforms. So it's kind of one of those things where it probably was on fire in a forum somewhere, on Reddit somewhere.
Probably okay, player level or something,
Right, but not amongst the masses, and some people didn't even know that happened. One thing I wanted to say about Rawkus that I think also played a role, like you said, they started releasing people who really didn't get any real notoriety. But in the early 2000s, the independent scene was on fire, like Ttihh Records. And Ttihh was signing notable hip-hop stars like Fat Joe and Ice Cube and stuff like that.
James Jones too, I believe, right? And some of
to these deals where, as long as they promoted their stuff and all of that, they were making way more money than they would make previously.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, Rawkus was kind of gathering, like you said, Kool G Rap, Mad Skills. Like, it was kind of, they did the deal with Big L. They were kind of gathering heads, but they could have had some of these people, maybe not them specifically, but some of these people who took these Koch deals.
Right.
But I don't think they can match that kind of a deal, because Koch was doing something different that hadn't really been done at the time. I think Snoop had a deal with them. Either them or another label, independent label.
Now,
I think more, and some labels did this too, to say independent. I think they just had more competition in what they did, at the time. So
now there was some rumors that the heads of Rawkus started trying to think like the head of major labels, and the way business was done with the artists and such started turning people away from Rawkus. Relationships getting broken because they started using the Jimmy Iovine, Dr. Dre type of, and I don't want to say Dr. Dre, but I'm just saying, for example, the big label Interscope type of mentality. And it could have been because when when you merging or you doing distribution with people, you're in some room and you're doing business, and because you have had some success, you got executives start living like they are the head of Capitol Records. You got executives sitting on top of money, living a lifeless lifestyle with some rumors and money that should have been put back into the company to assist in maintaining artist development and things of that nature wasn't happening anymore. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of the end, and the iceberg was on its way, and the ship hit the iceberg, and if that happens, it's going to sink, right? So those are some of the rumors, and anybody watch this, you can fact check me on that. But these are things that I heard, these things that I saw a few YouTube platforms talking about this. It was a Rawkus. Matter of fact, there was a Rawkus. I don't know if it was a documentary or not, but people talked about some dissension as the ship started to sink, man.
Yeah, you could kind of see that later on because they had so much momentum, and then it was like all of a sudden it kind of cut off all of a sudden. You know what I'm saying? And it was hard to understand why. Like, we knew Pharoah Monch's deal. That's why, that first out solo leading into his next one, that's why so many years in between, is because you would think, well, most where you're saying.
That was Pharoah's only album on Rawkus, I believe. Same way I believe Black on Both Sides was most only album on Rawkus, I believe. I don't think True Magic or New Danger and what's the joint, the Ecstatic. I don't think none of that is Rawkus.
None of them was Rawkus, which is crazy when you think about it. It's kind of like, unfortunately, it's one of those things because the more you think about it, the same thing happened to Bad Boy. Right, Bad Boy had a string of solo albums or debuts from a number of their artists, and really that's the heyday. And sure, there was some hits because Life After Death was dope and that was big. But as you go to the second albums of even though I like Carl Thomas' second album, but Faith joint was cool, but maybe not as large as before. Same thing with 112 and Total, and it just felt like the Locks never got a second joint. Like,
Mace had Harlem World was 4 million platinum, but what happened after that? I mean, he did leave, but after that, Double Up and all that shit didn't
do nothing. Right?
Black Rob had a massive first album, but I think his second album, which was the Black Rob Report, was a great album, but no promotion.
No promotion.
G Dep had one album. Right,
he had one joint,
and it was dope. Sean had one album before that stuff popped off.
Right, Loon had one album. Like, you go through all. It's one of those things where I just wonder, and this is probably just for our labels, right? Like, it's almost like that debut of a MC where the debut is crazy, it's a classic, and then the sophomore jinx, and they never recover, or they never able to capture that. And it kind of felt like that with Rawkus, because it was like, don't get me wrong, Talib went off and did what he did, but he did it on other labels. You know what I'm saying? So you're right, man. One thing I wanted to ask you, what do you think it was that made Rawkus Records so successful versus other underground hip-hop labels?
Well, actually, I think they was fortunate enough that most Talib and Pharoah, they were really just that good, man.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? As far as like those first few releases was monstrous. But they also had already established that cult following in the New York scene with the Lyricist Lounge and the Sound Bomb, and you even had the guys Wordsworth and
right.
All these guys were like the Lyricist Lounge freestyle guys. They in all these clubs all over New York, rhyming and representing that underground scene. Talib and most of them wasn't too big for that either because they were doing it. You know what I'm saying? And then you start affiliating yourself with Common and all these people. Next thing you know, Talib is running behind. Kanye is running behind Talib Kweli on tour while he's a big time producer. He's not a big time rapper yet. That's why he thanks Talib Kweli on College Dropout on the last track for taking him on tour with him and helping him as an MC. You know what I'm saying? So I just think what helped them was they started making a name with themselves on the East Coast, especially New York, you know, on the underground scene, doing a lot of rhyming and getting a lot of respect from heavyweights. And then they just happen to be so good with these solo albums. Their Black Star album, you know, again, Reflection Eternal, your Get By is massive. I just think they made Umi Says was massive. You know, Simon Says was massive. And so all the other guys in the culture had to take notice of Mos Def Kweli and Pharoah Monch for one, because these are kind of the faces of Rawkus at during that period. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
High Tech becomes a very known producer at the time on the underground. Then he ventures off and does some production with 50 Cent and G Unit. You know what I'm saying? He has songs on the Massacre album with 50 Cent, and you know, he's working with Snoop Dogg and all of this stuff. So you had them starting to really, really branch out, man, and they carried the label with their skills, man, for a couple of years until I guess business just wasn't popping off anymore.
Yeah, it was almost like, you know, the label wasn't prepared for the level of success that this kind of hip hop was going to have, because it really didn't look like, it was almost like going backwards, right? Because Nas had this, he knew at a certain point, I can't keep doing that, but Rawkus and these MCs was like, no, we know how to chef it so it works for today.
Yeah.
I'll start first with this. What do you think Rawkus Records, like, what their legacy is? And I must just say that I think it's a lot of the things we just said. I think in a lot of ways, and it feels weird to say this because I'm trying to find a different way to say it, but like, I feel like they kept the soul in hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different on an R&B scale if you have the, you know, the hook that hits 1,000,000 times and the catchy lines and the dude or the woman ain't really singing like that, and then they make a ballad, you know, over here. Rawkus Records was like the ballad, right? It was like the true link to soul music, you know what I'm saying? And this was like the true link to hip hop. Sure, you know, sampling party records was a thing in the 90s, and everybody was trying to do certain things to get money and radio play, but this movement kept the essence of what hip hop was. And you could, you know, even in some of the hooks and song titles, you could draw a line right back to like early 80s hip hop, right? There's DJ scratching on here and all kinds of stuff like that, where some of that was becoming passe, you know, on a commercial side. So I think they really kept the soul of hip hop alive, and in the soul of the Black community by keeping conscious hip hop alive as well. So what do you think, Tone? What do you think their legacy is?
Man, I'm gonna see what I can add, because I think you hit it on the head. Everything you said, I agree with 100%. And just to piggyback a little bit, it was a backpacker's dream. You know what I'm saying? It's a backpacker's dream. When you think about some people who just kind of want to be anti-establishment, well, Rawkus provided that, especially with the Black Star album. I think that it provided that feeling, like I said earlier, of the early 90s, the early East Coast sound. You had some boom bap with it. You had the essence of rhyming and DJing. Like you said, they had a couple of albums that was kind of somewhat instrumental albums, you know what I'm saying? And DJs, all of this stuff. So it was still like you said, it was giving you the feel, some 80s feel and 90s feel, all in one. And then you, like I said, when you have the Black Star and Pharoah and all these guys, they're rhyming like, I mean, because Pharoah is from the early 90s. You know what I'm saying? Organized Confusion, Stress album and all this stuff like that. Fudge Pudge, this is like 1990, 1991. You know what I'm saying? Up until then they had the album in 94 and in 97, but their early album, their early 90s group. You know what I'm saying? Mos and Talib was rhyming when they were young, and I think Mos showed up on Stages High. You know what I'm saying? And you know, and Kweli, like he said, he was running all the little spots, you know what I'm saying, just people the scene out of hip hop. So he studied the culture, you know what I'm saying? And you know, again, you also have where you take Big L music and put it together into somewhat of an album and it goes gold. So that gives you that feeling of the hardcore part, not the conscious part, but the hardcore Harlem element. You get that, you know what I'm saying? So Rawkus, man, was their legacy is again, it came at a time when you still had a lot of people, even the hardcore MCs like DMX and Jay and all them, they were still commercial. So Rawkus provided you with going against, like I said, the establishment, man, and they did a great job of for quite a few years, man. It's to be commended, man. When you think about several Lyricist Lounge albums, 3 Sound Bombing albums, you get Kool G Rap on the joint to do an album. You know, you get all these other groups to do albums. Some Company Flow, like I said, they had a very popular album with their first album, 1997, got 5 stars for All Music. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, yeah, man, they put a lot of music out, man. Like I said, before the hip hop, before that Rawkus 50, they put out 35 albums. So even though maybe more than half of them didn't become popular albums, for that culture of underground New York rap, music was in abundance. So they did. It served their purpose, man. They did their purpose. They did justice for hip hop from their perspective. I don't have anything bad to say about Rawkus because whatever happened business wise with them and the artists, that's the record business. You'll be hard pressed to find people who felt like business maybe not handled a certain kind of way dating back to the 40s and 50s. You know what I'm saying? So what are we talking about here? The reason why we even have an unsung on TV one back in the days because record labels. For most of the part, these people didn't pop off because they ended up unsung because business just wasn't right. You know what I'm saying? Right. And Rawkus had a moment. I think that people will always remember them. You still had a Get By's a song that came from Rawkus that Jay-Z them got on. You know what I'm saying? You still have songs Impact. Kanye produced some. You know, Jay-Z jumps on the remix. Jay-Z gives Tyler a shout out on the Blueprint, Moment of Clarity. This is all because Rawkus worked.
Yeah. And, for those who don't know, they definitely graced the cover of a couple of notable magazines. Yeah. This truly was a prime time moment in hip hop for Rawkus Records and what they were doing and their plan and how, like Tone said, they had the right amount of MCs because they didn't have established MCs. Even having a Pharoah Monch, go solo wasn't necessarily going to like take your label.
Absolutely not.
But it kind of reminds me of like the Wu, right? Like seeing the genius in the Wu, and you like, oh, the genius is with these new guys, but it's like a whole different bag of hip hop.
Yeah.
That they just start dropping one after the other. So what do y'all think? Rawkus Records, you know what I'm saying? Were you around during that time, to experience the movement in the mid to late 90s, you know what I'm saying? From the Lyricist Lounge show, Sound Bombing, Pharoah Monch, Most, Talib, High Tech, all of that, it was a very dope time in hip hop. Unfortunately, we don't necessarily have it in the same way. Like Tone said, it was abundance of music and a variety of music. Yeah. Leave your comments in the comment section below. We'll definitely chop it up with you about Rawkus Records in that time in hip hop. Now, we like to do a certain thing at the end of these shows where we recommend a record, an album, or even a mixtape you should go back and listen to. I'll start first. I have 1992 Ice Cube's third album, The Predator. Now, for me, this was an album when it dropped. I didn't even know Ice Cube had a new album coming out. I just happened to be in downtown Brooklyn at the store that no longer exists no more, called The Wiz. And I was looking at the music and I'm like, oh, is this like a unreleased Ice Cube? Like I didn't know what it was because I didn't pick it up or
Yeah,
whatever. I didn't know what the hell it was, and I looked at the back and I'm like, nah, this is a full blown album. So I took it home and listened to it. What I like about this album, it's like the aftermath of Death Certificate, from the skits to the songs.
yeah.
When Ice Cube dropped Death Certificate, which was a very controversial album at the time, um, in a lot of ways, that Kanye is controversial, but not all of them.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of blowback for things he said on that album. He was being labeled as anti-Semitic, anti-Korean, just everything. And this album was almost like an answer to that in some respects. Very dope album that has a lot of notable tracks. I think the first single was Wicked.
Yeah.
I think in the context of the album, it's a little bit better than what it was when I first heard it. The Predator, It Was a Good Day. Y'all know that classic.
We're talking about one of possibly a top 5-10 rap song in the history of the culture. I mean,
Right.
That's how great that song is.
Right, and really, a lot of people don't recognize it, but it's a story. One of the dopest, probably top 5 stories in
One of the best days a brother can have.
Right. And when you think about it, as an MC, sometimes with all the people out there rapping, you wonder why somebody else didn't think of this very simple idea. But that's what makes it so dope. It's kind of like Stan, right? Everybody who's a celebrity gets fan mail and messages and stuff like that, and people are crazy. But sometimes it takes that one person to put the words together in a special way, like Ice Cube did. But Today Was a Good Day. Check Yourself remix is on here with DOS Effects.
Yep.
With the what beat was that? The Message beat.
Yeah,
it was dope. The original was also good. We had to tear this motherfucker up.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about a song that gets you hyped, mainly because this was post the riots from the Rodney King verdict in LA, and Ice Cube had somewhat predicted what would happen. Now, we all know what was going to happen, but because he said it on record before then, that's how he felt. So he made this record like, yo, y'all did this and this and this, so we had to tear this motherfucker up. And lastly, and this wasn't on the original, at least not the cassette, because I bought the cassette back then, but he got the song called 24 with an L.
Yeah, it's on a special edition, right?
Yeah, like special edition. It might have been on the CD version of it, but again, storytelling.
It's very dope.
Very dope song. Kind of in the same vein as the song he had a couple years back called The Product. Just a dope way to look at, and this is why I like Ice Cube a lot. A dope way to look at a black man from all levels. In the hood for the most part, right? As a kid, the teenager, whatever things you deal with, injustice, all kinds of different things. So very dope album from back then, man. Definitely go and check it out. Tone, any thoughts on Ice Cube's The Predator?
No, man, it was just another notch onto this legendary run that Ice Cube had, from America's Most Wanted to Death Certificate to Didn't Kill at Will at some point come out, The Predator, then Lethal Injection. I mean, you can say, Ice Cube has one of the greatest rubs in hip hop history. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he just really does. And The Predator, man, again, when you got today, Wicked and all that is cool. He had Gangsta Fairy Tale 2 on there, the 24 to the L you talking about. But man, when you think about Today's a Good Day, it's like Juicy. It's the perfect rap song. You know what I'm saying? People still sing it to this day. It was simple, effective, monumental, and it showed that Ice Cube is a writer, which is the reason why years later he's writing all these movies. You know what I'm saying? Because he could visualize things in a way that, only a handful of MCs can do. You know what I'm saying? To a certain level of consistency doing it, man. So now, man, Predator's probably underrated. You know what I'm saying? Like, his discography is probably underrated because I listen to Lethal Injection more than the Predator, but I believe I'm gonna pump the Predator on tomorrow and take another listen. It's been a long time, man. But yeah, my recommendation, man, is 50 Cent is the Future mixtape. So people know that Power of the Dollar got shelved by Columbia. 50 Cent was in a lot of different trouble. They got, after he got shot up, they ain't really want to touch 50 Cent at all. You know what I'm saying? And then we know the rumors about Supreme and everyone being, blackballing 50 Cent, and and so Guess Who's Back comes out, and it's a monstrous mixtape, and in 2002, and then also that year, 50 Cent's Future come out, and I want to say that they recorded 50 Cent's The Future in Canada because no studio in New York would let 50 do any recording because at the time he was on fire in the streets. You know what I'm saying? 50 Cent is actually one of those guys who the stuff he rapped about in his early rhymes, it was for real. And some well-known guys in the street really tried to murder this man. Okay? He didn't get shot at one time. They tried to kill him. You know what I'm saying? And this beef went on for a while. So the rumor was he recorded in Canada because he couldn't get into a studio in New York. And this also was the first mixtape where it was the introduction of G Unit with Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo. They also had a song on there, I think, with a group called UTP or something like that. But nevertheless, your boy was part of that group and ended up being in G Unit. What's the
Young Buck, yeah.
Young Buck. So that was the first time. And the dope thing about 50 Cent's The Future is they did a lot of dope rhyming with a bunch of hip hop and R&B beats. You know what I'm saying? And then Tony Yayo did a freestyle over a Mobb Deep beat, man. It was actually pretty damn clever. You know what I'm saying? I actually liked it, man. And Lloyd Banks had a freestyle on now. And then they had a lot of joints together, man. 50 Cent's The Future, man. 50 was on fire with these mixtapes, man. And it is what it is, man. So you remember 50 Cent's The Future, dog? What was your thoughts on it?
It was crazy, man. Like, it was, at the time it dropped, I think it was 2002.
Yeah, it was 2002.
Yeah, I was obviously listening like everybody else. The Ja Rule disses, the way he was flipping certain R&B records and turning them into hip hop records. Like, he was making songs out of songs that already existed, basically. And I just, at the time, I remember, I think I came home for something and I saw a billboard in downtown Brooklyn for this mixtape. And I had never seen anything like that before. Like, for a mixtape?
That's
hell
crazy.
no. You know what I'm saying? We driving down and I see 50 Cent is the Future on the tall billboard on Fulton Street. And I was like, wow, this dude is like the hottest hip hop artist out, but he don't have a deal, which is crazy. Usually you could be hot and not have a deal, but you're featured, and that's why you're hot. You're featured on this album or that album. This dude was hot for his mixtapes. So, and still wasn't really getting signed because he was blackballed, which is crazy when you think about it. It was like a layup for Eminem to say, "I'll do it." You know what I'm saying?
It really was, man, because I think before that, all he had was, he was on Into Deep soundtrack. You know what I'm saying? Right. I was with How to Rob set some, it gave him some underground love and stuff like that. Then he had that rowdy on that damn, on Into Deep. That joint was hot, man. But yeah, he was just crushing the underground scene, man. And this was just another dope project leading up to Eminem, changing things, man. And the rest is history.
Check out both of those projects. 50 Cent is the Future, Ice Cube's The Predator. Did you enjoy the show? Leave your comments in the comment section below, but you could also hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, Hip Hop Now podcast, but also visit EnterdaDome.com and EnterdaDome podcast right here on YouTube, The links will be in the description of this episode. If y'all want to see more, y'all gotta let us know, because we could do this all day. To be honest. All right. Well, till next time, y'all. Go out and support real hip hop.
Peace.